Foxy Music. 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 Foxy Music.
Good evening, good evening. Long time no see. Hope everything is fine, including the sound. If anyone is around there, if you can let me know if the sound is all right. It seems to be okay. So, getting into the topic of this presentation, open class, how I've called it. We decided to come along with an idea suggesting some topics so that the audience can select the favorite project they want to see replicated. So we'll try within an hour to get through all the stages from kind of taking it from scratch to see how we can build that particular project. Now, the project which was chosen for today is kind of a marbled cake with waffle paper. So I'm going to get through all the stages and just give you an idea about how I will do it if I will be asked to replicate that kind of a cake. So obviously we'll have to start with the baking because we still talk about cake here. So we have to get into the baking. I'm not going to do any baking tonight. I'm just going to explain how I usually do the baking because pretty much my audience is based not on professionals working from an environment which allows to bake like large quantities, mainly referring to those people who really want to do cakes from home. And I just want to suggest a few things. Maybe they will inspire you and they will help you to get good results in a shorter time. So starting with the baking, we do have lots of recipes and tutorials and free classes on our new platform. If you haven't subscribed to it, go to Academy of Baking and cakedecorating.com and then just subscribe for free. That's going to be a free, forever free subscription. We will never charge for it. But once you subscribe, literally just put your email address, you get access to the information. And the reason why we ask for your email address is not to bombard you with emails now, because I'm just not into sending emails very much. It's just to kind of see if you really want to learn. If you just want to kind of browse around, you can just go on your YouTube and just have a look and see what we've got there. But if you want to learn, then you can subscribe and then get access to lots and lots of classes and tutorials which are for free. So as I said, on the baking section, we've got so many types of sponges which you can get. So I'm not going to go through the recipe of making a sponge, but I'm going to talk about the equipment, what I will usually use if I will be asked to make a cake or possibly two cakes. Okay. Now I do have a range of ovens, I would say. One is like a domestic type of oven, and the other ones are like semi-professionals, so I can fit around 4 trays in one oven. Now, when you do use like a domestic oven, you might be able to fit 1 or 2 trays, but either way, instead of piling up lots and lots of baking tins, I will suggest you to get perforated tray. Now, you might say, oh, another expense on top. Yes and no. If you will sell all your baking tins and make some money, then you can buy those, and I can promise you, you will never regret, because instead of just piling up lots and lots of baking tins, you will have possibly 2 of those trays, which will be great for baking pretty much everything. So starting from sponges, you can bake your cookies if you want. You call it. It practically is a tray which will work for everything you want to bake. Now, I intend to use the Becoglide, the reusable silicone sheets. Obviously, you can buy them by meter and then just cut them to the right size. But I can tell you, I think I've baked hundreds of sponges already with this particular one. So it looks a little bit kind of worn out, but it keeps for a very long time. So it's a long time investment. And I usually intend to prepare my sponges and just bake them onto those baking trays. And I know already how many layers I can get out of one tray, if there are 6 inches or 7 inches or 8 inches. Now, it will probably take a little bit of practice, maybe 1 or 2 bakings for you to kind of realize how many layers you should bake. But what I can tell you is that the baking time will dramatically reduce. So for example, if I would bake a traditional Victoria sponge, for example, to get a 1-inch deep sponge, I need to bake my mix for about 20 minutes. Okay, and in 20 minutes, I know it's done for sure. There is no need for me to check for doneness, because I always bake super, super nicely. And plus, I don't get a dome on the top. It all comes up pretty much like level, so that I don't have to do any trimming. So that's what I would suggest you to try when it comes to baking. So all my students who have seen in the class the way how I do it, they've borrowed the method and they are super happy with that. Now, but you might ask, but how can I just set everything to the right size after baking? So obviously you take your sponge out of the oven once it's baked. I normally intend to use cooling racks, and immediately while the sponge is still hot, I will just flip this upside down on my rack and I will get my sponge out of the way. I will leave it to cool completely, and then I will start cutting. Now, I do have various rings, and I intend to make cakes around 6 to 7 inches round for the orders in the bakery. Now it's up to you. If you want to offer any size to anyone, please, every single person, that's fine. But when you do it for business, I would say, if you want to maintain your mind in a good shape and to stay sane, offer 2 or maximum 3 sizes. Don't just go mad with sizes. But if you want to, that's no problem. I've got here a professional type of metallic ring, and I've got a plastic one. Now with the plastic one, we've made those, so I can't really point you where to look for. But with the professional ones, you can get them from any supplier, or you can just go to Amazon and buy some rings. But they are fairly expensive. But if you look for a set of cutters like the PME cutters, the set of 19 cutters, you practically end up getting any size you can think of up to 7 inch. Okay, so if you want to make small cakes, I've got here an example that's like a 4.5 inch. but it can be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6.5, up to 7, any kind of size. So you can use the cutter to cut, and in the same time that cutter is going to be used for building the cake. Just trying to look for the right size for my cutter. So using this cutter, I can cut my layer of cake, and I can also start building it. Just to give you an idea, if you use a 6-inch round cutter, then you end up with 1, 2, 3, and the other parts will make your 4th layer. So you end up with a 4-inch tall, 6-inch wide cake out of a baking tray. And obviously on our platform where you get the recipe, you've got the recipe to get to the right amount of mixture to put in one tray, and then you can do your maths and then see how profitable that is, because literally you end up using every single piece of cake. You don't get like burns onto the side because all the layers would be perfect, and the baking time would be much shorter. So that's with the baking. Now you might think, you might want to ask, well, what about if you ever got a square cake? That will work in the same way. If I've got a bigger cake that's 7-inch, you can get a collapsible ring, and you can go with up to 12 inches cake. I don't think that you can fit a baking tray larger than 12 inches in your domestic oven anyway. So maybe the maximum size you will go anyway for, it will be 12 inches. But you can sort this out super easy with a little investment, and practically all your baking equipment is going to be set into this kind of a room. Yeah, no more than that for doing lots and lots of baking, rather than just piling up lots of baking trays. Good. Now, when it comes to building, I will always recommend you to get a little scale, and then if you've got your slices of cake, so presumably you've already sliced the cake and you've got a board, you can start building. So you put your cake card on top of the scale, and then you put a cling film on the top to make sure that your cake doesn't get stuck into it. You put your ring, whatever ring you've used for cutting the cake, and then you get some acetate paper. Now there are different widths of acetate paper, and I've got the PME one because this is the one I will recommend. I will not recommend you to buy whatever acetate strip you will get online, especially on Amazon, because some of them are quite flimsy, and then it's very difficult to set the cake around. But the PME ones are super sturdy, and they are not expensive. So if you really want to get a good quality acetate strip, go for the PME one. And if they don't work properly, put the blame on me. I can assure you they do work. Before they started producing those acetate strips, I used to just buy them like randomly from different suppliers, and I always went into trouble because the very wide one, they used to be super soft and impossible to work with. Now we do use quite a lot when we work with chocolate, so I've got lots of this. You see a big roll for working with chocolate, because I just want to demonstrate how I'm going to build up the cake, so I don't have to wait that long to build the cake. We've got many other things to do throughout the class. So with this acetate paper, all I have to do is just to place that inside of the cutter, which I've used to cut the layer, and I can start building my cake. Now the reason why I would say it's good to have a scale in front of you, because you put your first layer of sponge, and this is a sponge made with pistachio, so that's the reason why it just looks a little bit kind of colored. Let's get into a much closer setup so that you can see better what happens in here. Okay, So I've put already my layer of sponge. Now, depending on the recipe, depending on what you want to do, you might want to put drizzle some syrup, or you just might want to put the creams immediately. So in that case, you just set your scale to 0. Just looking to make sure it shows grams. Yeah. So you put your scale to 0, and then you get your cream. I normally intend to put it in large bags. And then just literally just go around and squeeze. Now, again, with the creams, we've got so many recipes which you can use on our platform, available for you to download. So I've got 100, let's put 120 grams. Okay, of this is patisserie chocolate cream. But you don't have to worry too much about getting the layers even. All you have to do is to put the same amount of cream in between each layer, and then when you set the next layer of sponge on the top, then you press with a piece of cake card, if you want to make sure that it all turns up super level. So when you slice the cake, all the layers turn up even. So not too much of a panic. Now, if, for example, the mix you put, the cream you use inside is quite soft, and you want all the layers to be even in size, but you still want to get a decent amount of cream between the layers, now you have to bear in mind that the more you add, more layers of sponge or of cream you add, the heavier the end product will be. So obviously the heaviness is going to squash and make the cream to kind of overflow, which means that the layers will look nice, but they will not be perfectly equal. So if you want that kind of perfect finishing, then you should allow a little bit of time for the cream to set. So you set a sponge, cream, and maybe another layer of sponge, so not more than 3 layers of sponge and 2 layers of cream, and you put this in the fridge or in a freezer, and you leave this to set for a while, and then you carry on, and you can build in this way a super tall cake, and it's going to look really nice, even if, as I said, you've got like an 8-inch cake and the cream inside is super soft, because as it's going to get chilled, it will set firm. Now, obviously, for you to spread, you can't really spread it when it's chilled. So you just have to kind of think how to set this in order. So that's how I will carry on building the cake. And obviously, I will use a wider acetate strip. If you want, you can put narrow acetate strips as you go along for each layer. But I will probably use a wider one and then keep building to get the cake to the stage I want to. And when all the cake is finished, the cake normally goes in the fridge or freezer to get set and ready for coating. Now, when it comes to coating, that is kind of a different story, and I know many of you are kind of getting struggle with coating. I know I can see that on the students who are attending our classes. They always complain that they don't really know how to get a really nice coating on the cakes. So we intend to run classes where they literally learn how to coat properly. And we've got lots of tutorials. Some of the a few classes will get you through all the stages, step by step, how you coat a cake with buttercream to get it nice and even. Now, if you build a cake in the way I've showed you, when you take the cake out of the fridge or the freezer and you take away your acetate strip, the cake is already nice and sturdy, super set, and it looks good. So obviously it's going to be easier to coat a cake when the cake is balanced and it looks straight. Now, if the cake is a bit wonky, then obviously the end result is not going to be great. And for you to make it to look nice, you might have to use a lot of buttercream, a thick layer of buttercream, so that it gets to the finishing you want. Now, if your cake, for example, gets a little bit wonky and you don't have a ring to work with, you can use this collapsible one when it's all set and literally just squeeze and help the cake to regain its shape. And that can work in a really nice way. If you're going to make a square cake, if you use a square frame and the same acetate paper, but with the acetate paper you create a crease along to match each corner of each corner of your frame. Then when you build your cake, the edges will turn up super sharp. So again, something which will help you to get the finishing you want when you coat the cake. So I hope this is going to give you an idea about how to get the cake to the stage you want in regards with the coating. Now let's have a look in here. Now I already have a cake which we've done in one of the classes, so this is pretty much what we do in a class when we learn about buttercream. So we do some piping, we do some drips, and obviously we learn how to coat the cake. And the way how we do it is normally just getting a spatula, taking the buttercream and just going around to coat the cake. And obviously the cake is used on a turning table, and as we rotate the turning table, we make the edges to look really nice. The reason why I've got the cake in front of me is just to show you with the gold finishing on that cake, which we want to kind of replicate throughout our lesson. We've got some gold. So that gold can be achieved in various ways. You can probably go along with some with a gold spray. So if, for example, you finish coating your cake, you can just spray the whole cake and then wrap it in fondant, because literally you are not going to roll the fondant in a traditional way, how you probably thought you would be good to do it. You will just get like patches and then just stick it onto the cake. So you will never know where the fondant is going to cover your cake. Or you can plan in advance and then you prepare your pieces of fondant, rolled out marble fondant, and only paint or spray the areas which you know they will be covered. But as I said, there are many options which you can look at, either spraying with the gold spray, and again at this point I would say PM is a very good spray, but it has to be shaked super nicely, and then you can spray and it's going to turn up nice. The only thing which I would suggest to be careful with, if the cake is quite chilled, then you will get drips of water on the side along with your gold spray. So just be careful with the temperature of the cake when you spray. Or you can use some gold dust, and to get a good finishing when you use a gold dust, I will suggest you to use some oil-based essence. I've got here some vanilla essence. When you use this, the gold looks really nice, and plus because you're going to paint on buttercream, you don't have to worry too much about how that's going to look like. So I'm just going to do a close-up in here. Let's see, just going to pick an area in here, yeah, and just to show you that you can practically just paint. Just trying to do it, so can't really see what I'm doing, so I have to turn it to make sure that I'm doing it right. Okay, so literally you can just do a touch up of gold in whatever way you want, and it's going to have a really pleasant odor because you've used that essence and you've got your cake painted in gold. Now another way how you can do it is by using some gold foil, like edible gold foil. And again, we're just going to get another patch where I can show you how that looks like. Just going to break this into pieces, and I do have a soft brush, yeah, and I don't have to worry too much about adding anything because I've got my buttercream. What I have to be careful is not to break the foil, so just trying to be quite careful. Can't really see what I'm doing when it's upside down. Okay, just going to rip this off, but with the brush I can make it to look super nice, and that's going to look more gold than this part. Yeah, so you can see the effect when it's painted or when you've got that gold foil set onto the cake. So obviously the gold foil is going to have a much nicer finishing, but if you don't have that available, it's not super expensive, but you have to order it and make sure that you've got it handy if it's required. Then the painting or the spraying will work the best. Yeah, but the effect obviously is different. So we'll just get this out of the way. Maybe just place it back in on the fridge, and we can use this to kind of do the patching with. Let's actually put the little cake in here as well. Okay, so when we'll reach the stage of setting up the fondant on the cake, we can use that cake to do it. Just tidy up the area, and now get to the next stage, which is going to be rolling out the fondant. Now I've got here some acetate strips. We normally use those to work with chocolate, but they're very good to kind of handle fondant when it's rolled out. It's quite good that it's transparent, so you can see through. And even if you cut it in half, it's still super wide. So got a dummy in here just to show you. So in case that you want to, for example, roll a long strip of fondant, that should be okay to go around the cake, almost around the cake, but this is like a 9-inch cake, so it's great for a 7-8 inch cake. So for example, if you want to cut this in half, okay, and you can roll your fondant right on this strip and then use the strip to transfer the fondant onto your cake. It just works so much easier, so you don't have to worry that it's going to stretch, it's going to get a shape which you don't really like. Because I've got a dummy in here, to demonstrate, I'm going to spread some Trex first so that my fondant is going to stick to it, but at the same time I can practically use my real cake, which is now in the fridge, the one I've painted with gold, and do it. But I can also use a dummy in case that you are planning to go for a competition and you want to use dummies, and this is how you can set up your gold foil. So you spread your fat, and I will always suggest to use a vegetable fat because it's got a longer shelf life. You will spread your Trex or Crisco, and then you will attach your gold foil or your fondant, whatever you are going to work with. That goes on the side. Just going to get that in here. Okay, so gold foil. Let's put some gold foil on the dummy so that you can see how that works when you work with a dummy. Okay, just going to get one sheet and going to set it right from the base. I'm using the paper to help me transfer the gold foil on the cake. And then with the brush, all I have to do is to gently brush over to stick the gold foil into here. Okay, I can do the same on the top if I want, or if the top will get covered with some, let's do it. But if the top gets covered with something else, then there is no need for gold foil, so that can be trimmed away. Okay, so for now we've got a decent area to use to demonstrate the rest of the bit when we start working with the fondant. Okay, good. So let's look at our fondant now. We've got this acetate paper and I've got some fondant in here. I'm using the pasta top from Saracino. I'm just going to try and take some away using my palette knife. This is the worst part when it comes to fondant in the bucket, trying to get some fondant out, especially when you forget to get a knife. So I forgot to get one, so we'll have to look for one. Okay, sorry for the interruption. Okay, so just going to take some pieces of fondant out. Okay, I don't need very much because this fondant is so stretchy and I only need a super thin layer. I don't need very much of it, but still need some. Plus I have to get that marble effect, and with that marble effect it can be more pronounced or softer. It really depends on what, you know, my vision about the cake is like. I think this should be okay, especially that we are not going to do the whole cake around, just a part, so that we can see how. And it's quite often when even on the photos you see them online, you don't see the back of the cake, so you don't always see if the cake is kind of fully decorated. It might be just to inspire others and might be just half decorated. Or in our case, we just want to understand how it can be done, so there is no need to cover the whole cake. Okay, so just going to pinch a small piece of pink. It's quite a deep pink, so it will be enough for me to work with. So just going to crumble it into pieces, and I can get some of my white and start kneading. I intend to use just a little bit of Trex to condition this fondant. It starts working better when it's conditioned. So just going to kind of start kneading. Now this modern fondant, which is super elastic, it's nice, but in the same time it just puts a lot of pressure on your wrists. So it can get quite tiring, especially if your wrists are not so fit like mine. Kind of lost my strength when it comes to kneading. Okay, just going to knit the other bit as well. I'm going to get half of this pink and mix it with one of my other pieces, trying to get a few different shades, so when I will start alternating the colors, we'll get different shades of pink, white, a very light pink, and so on. Okay, so just going to get some of the pink alternating in here. You see, I've just made like ropes, and I also want some black. And with this black, I don't need very much, just a little. I can even add the black later when the marble is already, when the fondant is already mixed, and I got this marble effect in place. But I can also just twist, and it will turn up like random. And that's the whole point of doing marble effect. I can also just put some and rip this, get my rolling pin, okay. I normally intend to use the Wilton rolling mat to roll my fondant. I'm actually going to show you how this works. I think it saves a lot of trouble, that you don't have to put too much pressure on your wrist when you do it. Well, at this stage, I'm not going to roll in the traditional way. Or I can, yeah, let's do one in the traditional way. As in, on the traditional way, I will have to have a little kind of bubble of fondant. And what I always suggest is, when you start rolling, is to get a smooth, to start with the smooth side underneath. So I will have to squash this a little bit so that I get a smooth side. I'm trying to look which one is the smoothest. Okay. I do like this bit. Let's put this down. And that is like a bubble in the center. Now with my rolling pin, I'm going to start rolling out the fondant away from myself, but I don't want the mat to move anywhere. So I'm going to put the mat, cross it over the table, and I will secure it. And from here, I'm going to stretch the fondant away. It's just so much easier rather than just keep rolling backwards and forwards. Just roll away, and then get your mat, turn it 180 degrees, and do exactly the same thing on the opposite side. Okay, and then you turn it now 90 degrees and you go on the opposite directions. Oops. Now I have to say, I'm not a huge fan of icing sugar, so I prefer to deal with the sticky rolling pin rather than having icing sugar on my hands. I just don't like it. Okay. So, and from this point, I can just stretch the fondant in the way I want. If, for example, it gets this weird shape, all I have to do is just to lift the fondant a little bit and then just stretch it from the center, push it towards the edge. Again, from the center, it gets towards the edge. And you get it to the right shape and size. But you can only do that if the fondant is a very good quality fondant, because if it's not going to work. Now I've got this marble effect on both sides. It's absolutely not regular, and I can just play with it in the way I want. That particular design which we said we are going to replicate, involves the use of some patches. So literally all you have to do is just rip patches of fondant and just stick them in the way you want. But also the top, if you look on the photo, the top is just perfectly clean. So for that we'll need, just trying to think, yeah, where are my cutters? I need one round cutter so that I can cover the top. The way how I can cover the top is either using a cutter, but if I don't have the right size cutter for my cake, I can flip the cake upside down and do it. But on the other hand, I know this fondant is super stretchy, so if I will stretch it enough from this size, I can get it to the right size of the cake. Or what I can do is to transfer this fondant on the cake. Yeah, super easy to work with. It's not going to break. Set it right on the top. And then with the scissor, just trim the excess. So always think about what works for you. What does the best job in that particular moment for that particular project. Don't get stuck to biases just because that's how you've been told by someone, that's how you've seen, that's how you've heard. Just put your personality in and try to play around with whatever you think is going to work for you. Gosh, my throat needs some watering. Excuse me. Good. So now I've got my top nicely covered, and I just want to get 2 patches so that I can create that overlapping effect of the fondant. I don't need the mat anymore. By the way, when you roll your mat, roll it face up so that when you open the mat on the table, it doesn't get curly, so that it troubles you when you roll the fondant. And also to protect your rolling pin, just use it and roll your mat around it. And then you've got a nice mat to work with next time. Obviously I have to wipe it first, but I'm going to put it on the side for now. And go to the stage of using my strip. I said about the strip, if you want to use it to cover the cake around, you can roll the fondant along the strip and then literally just place it around. It's very easy. Imagine that if the fondant is so light and so easy to maneuver, to have it rolled out onto a plastic strip, you will be just a piece of cake. So you can place it with ease. So let's go on this piece of fondant. Oh, I still need a rolling pin. Silly me. I see. I'm just not surprised. I had such a full day. I wouldn't say busy. You know, when you're busy, usually busy doesn't really mean you've done something important. It was a full day. Put it this way. It was a full day. I had lots of things on my plate, and yeah, so my brain needs time to process what it says. So I'm going to kind of roll this piece of fondant. Now obviously the marble effect will start fading when you keep rolling, because when you keep rolling, kneading, you end up with an even finishing rather than super marble effect. But I can still get a really nice piece out of it. And once it's rolled, I have to start, you know, ripping this to get that effect. It's just so weird how for many years I've started cake decorating probably about 15 years ago, and after I started cake decorating, for many years, people used to be obsessed with getting a super smooth finishing on fondant. And over the last few years now, all those cracked textures, stone textures, they became so trendy. So people are just trying to find perfection on imperfection, so which is great. Okay, so let's see how this works on here. So we'll go to the cake, and don't really want to cover too much of that gold, but to make sure that the fondant will stick onto my gold foil, I'm going to get my Trex. You know about this Trex. I'm using it because I've got dummy. In your case, if you will work on a real cake, you will just use some buttercream, and you can just brush that thin layer of buttercream, because otherwise your fondant will not stick to the gold foil. You can't really put anything like water. It has to be something grease based to make sure that you don't get into trouble. And just need to make sure that it's got the right length. Forgot to measure. I don't even have a measuring tool around me. Silly. Okay. So I'm just going to place this in here. And then using my scissor, I'm just going to level up. Okay. That's good. So that's fine. Now another piece, and I'm going to use the other part of my mix of fondant. Trying just to stretch that marble effect as much as I can. I'm now using the mat. My worktop, it's behaving nicely. It's even better than the mat because my fondant gets stuck to it, so it doesn't wrap around my rolling pin. I said I don't really like the feeling of getting any icing sugar on my hands, and I also don't like to overload the fondant with icing sugar if I can work without. So which way shall I go? Let's cut this way. You can obviously take measurements to make sure that you are in the right size, but I'm going to use it this way. Very difficult to say which side looks the best. And again, I'm going to just rip some in here and stick it again with some Trex or buttercream. Just going to get this sorted. Trying to press this down. If you want them to look like they match, you can even just rub with your finger with a smoother and just make them look like they are part of the same piece. But if you look carefully on the photo, you can see they are actually just pieces of fondant attached to the cake. Okay, now if you want, you can cover the board in one go as well, or you can just trim around the cake, and or if you've got a ready design board, those started to get quite popular lately. They're more expensive, but hey ho, if someone is happy to pay that much for a board, why not? I mean, the client will be the one deciding what they want or what they don't want to get on their cake. Okay, so this is how you get that kind of effect of having some gold patches, set either by painting or by putting foil underneath and then just covering. And the way how you rip the fondant, you might be better than I am. but you can just stretch and rip the fondant in whatever rough way you want. If you want to go quite wild, you can, but just bear in mind with the marbling, the more you knead and roll, the more you lose that kind of effect. If you want to do the whole thing on the strip, you roll and put the whole amount of fondant on this acetate paper, and then with the acetate paper you go around and you stick it on the cake. If you make like small patches like I did, then there is no necessarily important to use an acetate paper. So that's how I will do the marbling effect. Whatever fondant is left can be stored for later use because it's nice and soft. And let's look at the flour now. The flour, in my opinion, is a flour made out with out of wafer paper. And I had actually a pink rose made with kind of pink paper. If you've ever used like waffle paper, pre-colored waffle paper, you know what I'm talking about. And I've just airbrushed this with obviously with an airbrusher. So I've used wireless airbrusher and some red coloring. I know that the red coloring, it shouldn't be used with waffle paper, but hey ho, I said to you, don't just not do something because you've heard is not the right way to do it. Just give it a go, but just try on, you know, on a small piece, something which you don't really want to. I mean, it's no problem if you damage, but just try, because theoretically this airbrushing color is water based, so when you put it on waffle paper will kind of start melting. It didn't melt, and it turned out pretty much looking the same color like the flour I've seen on that cake, which was chosen as an example. So just going to show you, as I've got here some waffle paper roses. Okay, I'm just going to show you how they're going to look like if we spray with bronze spray, and then if we airbrush. So let's just go a little bit closer so that you can see what happens. Okay, and then we'll start making a quick flower out of some waffle paper. So I'm using here a bronze spray from PME. That's going to make a lot of mist around, so make sure that you use a box or something when you spray. It's going to be easier and better and cleaner. I'm using just a piece of kitchen paper. Okay, just give it a good shake so that it comes up with all that shimmery bit. Still don't have enough shimmer. Okay, and you can turn up the flour into a really nice bronze like finishing. Okay, I'm not going to carry on because it's going to cover everything with shimmer, and I do have all my devices around here. I don't want them to be all sparkly shiny, but just to give you an idea, this is how they will turn up looking like. Where is my, yeah, if you spray with the spray. If you use an airbrusher, okay, I've got here an airbrusher. I'm just going to put some of that red, and I'm using chroma color, but can't remember for sure what color I've used when I did this. Probably I've used the Square's Kitchen, or anyway, I've used a red. I can't remember what brand. I think it was Square's Kitchen, but it should be similar. So I'm using some chroma. I'm going to pour some of that. Okay, it'll be a good idea if I can open up the bottle before trying to spray. I think an wireless airbrusher will be a piece of equipment which I would probably recommend people to get as kind of a basic equipment if your plans are to make lots of personalized cakes. So airbrusher does save you a lot of hassle, but if it's just for now and then, maybe it doesn't worth the spending. Okay, I'm going to use another towel. I'm going to get another rose. Let's get one which is quite plain. Every time when you use a little airbrusher, try to spray with it on a separate area, so to make sure it all works. Okay, so all you have to do is just to start, pressing. I wouldn't apply too much of a pressure, because obviously if you put a lot of liquid, this is just colored water, so it's going to soften the petals. I will just go little by little. I will put the first layer, and if I want something even deeper than that as a color, I can put the second layer when this kind of dries. So I'm going to leave this for now on the side, so you can see that later, or you can put another coat, and we can literally just start making the flower. Another thing is, for example, if you don't have an airbrusher but you still want to put a bit of a color, or you don't have a bronze spray, you can use a little bottle with like a spraying bottle. It's going to stain, so you just have to be super careful, just because the opening is kind of wide comparing with what you get out of an airbrusher. But let's do that again, and bear in mind, I've got here paper. When you do it on fondant or waffle paper, it's going to look even I mean, the drips will show out even more. Yeah, so you can practically use this bit, but just in certain circumstances, like for example when you soften your waffle paper to stick it. And because we spoke about waffle paper, I'm going to use this kitchen paper, get another one, and show you what I mean by that. So I've got my waffle paper in here. As you know, if you've used waffle paper before, you know it's got a glossy side and a more like abrasive side. It's quite porous, so it's got lots and lots of little holes. That side is going to absorb the most part of the moisture, so just try and think before you actually stuck the petals if you want a more like abrasive, a matte side showing up, or you want something more like a glossy when you make your flower. Now I'm going to use paper cutter. Okay, I love working with waffle paper, but don't ask me to cut petals because I can't really stand that waste of time. So I intend to use paper cutters and cut those petals. Now, to be honest, we even decided at one point to actually sell those petals ready cut, and they do sell quite well because people intend to not have time to spend on cutting that many petals, and we do them in different sizes and shapes, and just sell them. Okay, so but I've just cut few petals. Now of course you can decide on the shape based on whatever you want to make, because the flower which was showing on the photo wasn't a rose, was a kind of a wild flower. I decided to make a little change and do it like a rose because it works quicker, and plus roses are more popular. I've got here a piece which I can also use, but it's just that when you use, usually when I do a rose, I intend to use a round cutter rather than this multi-petal cutter, so it will just look slightly different. But you know what I said about using this little pump? So in here I've got a mix of color, again liquid color, a little bit of water, and a little bit of glycerin. And the reason why I've added glycerin is that the glycerin, it will not moisten the paper so quick, so it will give it a more flexibility without making it too soft. So if you work with wallpaper, I would suggest to make this mix. There is a lady called Anna. She does lovely wallpaper flowers, and she's got lots of tips and tricks about how to use wallpaper. And she's got so-called conditioner. Is again a mix of water and glycerin. She's using quite a lot. But if, for example, you spray and then just soften the petal, so it's soft but it's not moist, so that you can't really use it anymore. Plus, it just completely changed the color of the paper. Okay, so you can use that method to soften your wallpaper if you want to. So again, I've got here a different color. I can do it in the same way. Okay, so the paper becomes quite soft, but is still maneuverable. So if you want this method, that's absolutely fine. Just get yourself some little spray bottles and do it. Just bear in mind that whenever the wallpaper starts getting soft, if you attach the pieces together, they will actually get stuck. Good. Now let's go on to our flower. Just take this out of the way and get some stamens. I usually use like a paper cone, but I'm going to use this time some little stamens to make the center of the flower. So I'm just going to cut the stamens in half. Okay, then I've got a piece of wire. Now the thickness of the wire, this is probably a number 20. I wouldn't necessarily say that it needs a very thick wire because the flower is going to be very, very light. But the problem is that you have to make sure it's sturdy. So when you create the spray, it's got enough sturdiness to support the curving of the stems. So maybe, as I said, a 20, 22, even 18 will do, but not because the flower is heavy, just because you want a bit more firmity to create the spray. So I've already stuck the tape in here. I'm going to put my stamens and then just wrap this around. Now it can be quite tricky to tape with the gloves on because you don't have enough control, and if you try to tighten the tape, the gloves can be trapped in with the tape, so it's not the easiest thing to do. But hey ho, I'm a specialist. I should be able to do it. And you will be fine too if you will give it a go. Good. And now I'm going to start working with those petals. There are many ways to work with the wallpaper. As I've showed you, you can literally just spray some of this color, or if you want to maintain this color as a pink color. I've got here some water, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually use this this acetate paper, and just to pour a bit of water. I only need a super tiny amount of water. And I also have got here some it's called vegetable glycerin, but it's literally glycerin. It cannot be animal glycerin. I don't know what they put, vegetable glycerin, because it's made out of a plant, can't be animal. And I'm just going to mix this because I don't want to add too much moisture onto my petal. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to soften the center and then start applying a little bit of kind of folding, because I want this to go around my stamens. So you see, super easy. Okay, it takes a little bit of time for the first petal to be attached to the center, but then everything else should be very easy to do. Again, moistening the fingers and just setting up the petals like a little cluster, and I can get that attached into here. What I really want is to avoid touching the tip of the petal, as if I touch the tip of the petal, the moisture might ruin the tip of the petal, but in rest everything can stay the same. Again, softening the center and then just folding. You have to apply a bit of pressure and then go on the flower and then just stick the base to whatever you've got already stuck in here and just press for a little while till it all gets stuck nicely. Okay, one more. Just looking, we are kind of a little bit over the time, but I'm about to finish now. Again, just fold this bit and attach. You just have to have the a little bit of patience to wait till it gets set. Same way the other one. Making sure that there is no moisture to deteriorate the tip of the petal, and then attach to the base. The base is always going to be moist and it will help you to attach the petals. Yep. Set it on the tissue and it got stuck to the tissue. Okay, and you keep adding all those clusters. You might need to press from time to time so that they get stuck to the tape, and you carry on adding till you kind of make the flower as big as you like. Or what you can do, you can just cut this petal in half and then just add some moisture, then go on to your pad. Oh, just realized I haven't actually got any tool next to me to show you, so I'm going to use a knife and then just put some texture. Might not show on the camera that much, but it does have a little bit of texture, and again some moisture at the base so I can overlap some of those petals. And if you find that this is easier to work with, just put some moisture and then just attach this into here. And if you put obviously less petals, they will stick quicker and easier, and you can carry on building the flower in the way you want. Okay. When it comes to leaves, you will do exactly the same thing, but for the leaves I've got a different kind of cutter, and if you I completely understand if you don't have them, and there is no need to buy them, but you will have to just cut everything by hand, which is not my thing, because I think it's just a waste of time. I do prefer to get some tools to save my time, because I can't really buy any time, but I can buy tools. In here, for example, if I've got 2 leaves and a piece of wire, and I get a piece of wire moistened into water, I can stick 2 leaves, one on top of the other. It's all a matter of having the patience to do it, rather than you know, anything else. It works super quick, but you have to just have the patience to do it. And I will carry on making lots of leaves, and then they will come up together into a stem, or put them next to the flower, which I can say I can make it as big as large as I want. I will spray or just leave the flowers in the way they are, and then I will attach them onto the cake. If you work on a real cake, Do remember you have to have a posy pick. You can't really put the wires right onto the cake, but I will literally just pretend that I've got here a posy pick. I don't, but I will just pretend. So just going to insert this bit, put the flower on the side, and pop this bit on the side as well. Okay, so it's kind of just a replica of what we've seen on the photo. So literally we've talked about how we bake, how we coat, how we paint or with gold or apply the gold foil, how we do the marble effect and coat the cake in the way it was shown on the photo, and how we make the flower color and create this kind of effect. So I hope whatever I've shared with you at least a little bit was useful, and I would appreciate to get a feedback from you to see if whatever I've shared was useful to you. And I do hope to see you soon. I'm going to share another set of about 10 photos to pick from. Maybe I will stick to a different topic rather than just cakes this time. But if you are interested in something in particular, do let us know. Just pop that into the comment, and we'll come up with something great. Thank you so much for being with me this evening. Thank you. Appreciate.